Swift's throne isn't just wobbling, it's about to be ripped right from under them. Ripple just walked onto the world stage and said, "Move over, we've got this." So here's why I'm fired up. I've spent half my adult life waiting for international wires to crawl through the banking maze. 2, 3, sometimes 5 business days, with mystery fees sniped off at every stop. At the 2025 World Economic Forum in Davos, Ripple's senior VP Eric van Mittenberg basically kind of grabbed the microphone and announced that those days are over. He called Ripple a Swift update or replacement. Replacement, that's kind of word that kind of makes you, at least makes bankers kind of sweat, and crypto nerds like me start doing little victory laps in the kitchen. So stick with me here, because what we're going to discuss, and by the end of this video, you're going to know why that single sentence could redraw the map of global money movements and why it might put a rocket under XRP. Oh, and don't forget, if you want even more behind the scenes chatter, hop into our free crypto Discord via the link that is in the description. We've got charts, memes, and the works. Let me rewind to that snowy morning in Davos then. Picture the scene. Glass walls, mountains, and an audience of finance heavyweights in tailored suits. Now, Eric is on a panel about cross-border payments, right? Traditionally, the realm of Swift. Now, the 50-year-old network that every kind of bank uses to send each other kind of cryptic messages like, pay Bob and confirm Sally. Now, Swift is fine if you enjoy kind of faxes and black and white televisions. But in 2025, it's the kind of financial equivalent of mailing VHS tapes. Now, Van Mittenberg, leans into his mic and drops the line. Ripple isn't just fixing the rails, they're rebuilding the track. Now, the room does that kind of polite cough thing, right? And somewhere in the crowd, a Swift exec suddenly discovers the power switch on kind of his stress ball, if you will. Now, if you've ever tried to explain Ripple to your mum, you know how it goes. Is that the same as Bitcoin? Do I need a special wallet? Well, Ripple, the company, makes software, right? Ripple Payments, that kind of lets the banks, fintechs, even broom closet startups move money across borders in seconds. XRP, the token that can kind of grease the wheels as a bridge asset, but it doesn't always have to. Remember that, it matters later. The reason this Davos soundbite blew up is because Swift has never exactly rolled out the red carpet for Ripple. Now, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗏, one of the sharpest voices in the XRP community, tweeted the following: Ripple never or at least I should say, they never liked Ripple XRP narrative, right? She got receipts also going back to 2019, right? Panel discussions where Swift reps politely side-eye Ripple, like they're the kind of new kid wearing headphones in class. Now, this kind of friction isn't just kind of Twitter drama, right? It's actually a turf war. Now, banks pay Swift membership fees, plus per message fees, plus the honor of waiting days for settlement. Ripple says, what if we charge a fraction of that and settle almost instantly? That's the Netflix kind of story kind of, trolling over Blockbuster's board meetings like a USB stick full of HD movies. And things got spicier when Ripple announced it was buying Hidden Road, a prime brokerage that plugs right into global liquidity pools, the very pools that Swift-routed transfers, ultimately kind of swam through. Now, analyst Arthur, the one who always kind of treads, 10 tweets before kind of breakfasts, argued that this acquisition isn't just a handshake with legacy finance, it's actually a bypass. Now, Swift kind of sits in the middle of international money, like a kind of traffic cop with a whistle. Now, Hidden Road plus Ripple, well, that's the kind of fleet of self-driving cars, taking the side streets. Now, Arthur even went full-on Bond villain, calling Swift a liability because, sanction lists and politics slow everything down. And he's not wrong. One geopolitical kind of flare-up and the entire corridors freeze. So let's pause for a reality check then, because look, I can kind of gush about faster payments all day long, but the big question is, do banks actually want to ditch SWIFT? Right? Legacy tech in finance is like old wallpaper, right? Everyone hates it, but ripping it off kind of feels scary, right? Ripple's kind of secret sauce is that they're not asking banks to flip some kind of crimson on and off switch or lever, right? They're actually rolling out a bit of a step-by-step integrations, right? API first, compliance first. Van Mittenberg stressed regulatory friendship on stage, right? In every region. Right, Ripple lawyers do the dance so their customers don't have to. Now that matters when you're dealing with trillions in trade flow. It's boring, but boring gets deals signed. And here is where the XRP part trips people up. Right, Erie kind of sets the record straight. XRP is available, but it's not compulsory. If a bank wants to jump from USDT in New York to pesos in Mexico, XRP can be the fast lane, converting fiat to XRP, XRP to fiat within seconds. But the corridor, if the corridor I should say, already has deep USDT liquidity or USDC liquidity, forcing XRP in the middle just adds additional cost. Now, Ripple's CTO once kind of called it using a translator when both parties are already speaking Spanish. The flexibility is the point here, right? Give customers Lego bricks, not superglue. So imagine being a chef, for example, who can only cook with truffles. It's fancy, sure, but sometimes the diners, they just want fries. So let me ground this in a story, right? Last year, I tried wiring a modest sum to a freelancer in the Philippines. My bank charged me $50. Swift handled it, to an intermediary bank that kind of skimmed off another $18. And the pesco amount that kind of landed there was 3 days later, minus a weird correspondent fee, right? That nobody, of course, could explain. Now, Ripple's pilot corridors, they show that the same transfer could settle in 20 to 30 seconds with fees measured in pennies. Now, people say, but what if crypto crashes? The end user doesn't even see the crypto, right? They see the pesos, right, appear, dollars vanish, gone. It's kind of like Uber, right? You don't think about the kind of routing algorithm, you just watch the car icon slide closer. So let's talk numbers for a second. Quick math, I promise. Now, Swift moves around $150 trillion every single year. Now, even if Ripple captures just a single % of that, that is a $1.5 trillion volume. That's not revenue, it's volume. But payment providers, they actually earn on at least basis points on that flow. Right, so let's plug in some conservative fees into your mental calculator, and you'll soon start seeing why Ripple employees, sometimes grin like they know a secret. And guess who else sees the math? That's right, central banks. Now, many of them are building their own digital currencies known as CBDCs. The plumbing matters more, of course, than the token, and Ripple's tech offers that plumbing in a plug-and-play manner. But bold claims invite big obstacles. Regulation is a hungry beast, and it's still chewing on the crypto bones. Now, the SEC's lawsuit against Ripple over XRP's security status cast a very long shadow. 2024's partial victory was a relief, but not kind of absolution, right? Now, Van Mittenberg's replacement, Jab, at Davos is kind of gusty when your kind of legal team's still kind of mailing filings, in kind of triplicate. Now, it's important to understand that Swift isn't exactly folding chairs either. Last year, they partnered with Chainlink to kind of demo tokenized asset transfers. It's kind of like the old king hiring ninja trainers because they heard a new knight might, kind of bring a lightsaber to the party, right? Competition breeds upgrades. And here's the scene that everyone keeps replaying, the climax of the panel, cameras rolling, Van Mittenberg talking about customer-centric design. Then he pauses, smiles, and drops the line again for emphasis. We see ourselves as a Swift update. Maybe even a replacement. Now, that second that he says replacement, a kind of moderator raises an eyebrow like, did he just say that? Right? Twitter explodes, hashtag Ripple, pun intended, and price kind of ticks up. Now, and of course, we have to understand that Telegram channels, of course, flood with hot takes ranging from Swift is toast to marketing hype, show me live corridors. Right? That moment, it kind of crystallized years of speculation into a single headline. Ripple declares open season on Swift. And if you're wondering how this plays out, think of music streaming, right? Once upon a time, CDs ruled. Then iTunes unbundled songs. Spotify unbundled ownership entirely. Swift is the CD era. Banks own kind of clunky messaging that kind of rattles through correspondent partners. Now, Ripple is Spotify. Press play, hear the song. Right? Consumers, they don't care about the underlying file format. They care about, that it kind of works instantly. When a treasurer at a mid-sized exporter can pay suppliers, before her coffee gets cold, well, that's the sticky kind of convenience. But disruption is not guaranteed. Right? Ripple needs corridors, partnerships, and compliance stamps in every time zone. They've got roughly 75 corridors live, but Swift has 11,000 members in 200 countries. That's a mountain. Now, the strategy, start where pain is the biggest. Think remittances, low value cross-border B2B. Places where a kind of $30 Swift fee is half a day's wage. If you win there, then climb up market. Hidden Road kind of gives Ripple a kind of turbo boost then, right? Accessing liquidity pools previously kind of gated behind prime brokers. It's kind of like unlocking a kind of warp pipe in Mario Kart. Suddenly, you're on a secret shortcut. Throughout all of this, XRP's role stays the wild card. If corridors pick it, demand for XRP will spike. If corridors rely mostly on stablecoins, XRP is the cool cousin who shows up for the holidays. Now, investors, they hate uncertainty, but optionality is a feature when you're pitching to stodgy kind of banks that still kind of fax PDF forms. And while stablecoins are great, someone has to hold reserves, manage compliance, audit every quarter. XRP, by contrast, is decentralized. No bank account to freeze, no treasury manager to subpoena. In kind of sanction-heavy corridors, that neutrality is actually gold. You know how every superhero origin story has the moment the kind of protagonist finally says, I choose this path. Now for Ripple, Davos was that kind of balcony scene. Right? Van Mittenberg didn't hedge or cough the vision in corporate jargon. He said replacement. And replacements don't happen overnight, but they do happen. Now ask Kodak about digital cameras or Nokia about touchscreens. Technology compounding over time is like water carving a canyon. Slow but for years, but it's undeniable at the same time. So where does this leave us? If you're an XRP holder, it's validation, right? Proof that the company driving real adoption is swinging for the fences. If you're a bank exec, maybe you're booking a demo with Ripple's sales team, while quietly kind of renewing your Swift subscription, just in case. And if you're a regular user sending money abroad, well, you might not notice this kind of shift until one day your transfer lands before the weekend instead of after. Now that quite wow moment is when you realize the rails changed underneath you. Quick reality snapshot then. Regulation could still throw curveballs. Swift could fast-track tokenized messaging and cling to its network effect. Banks could decide that they're fine paying rent to the old landlord. But the narrative has shifted. Right? Ripple isn't asking for a seat at the table. They're building a new table. Now, internet ready, right? And inviting anyone tired, I should say, of dial up to come and sit down. right? In tech, momentum matters more than the incumbency, right? And right now, Ripple has the storytelling edge. They're speaking the language of efficiency, transparency, optionality, buzzwords that CFOs like the underline, in broad decks. Okay, one last anecdote before we wrap up. Last month, a friend of mine in Lagos received a payment from a US client via Ripple-enabled services. He texted me a screenshot. Dollars hit his, a wallet in under a minute. Fees less than a bottle of soda. He wrote, "Dude, this feels like magic." And that's the point here, right? It's great infrastructure. It feels like magic until you peek under the hood and see the lines of code replacing layers of bureaucracy. Swift paved the road. Ripple's installing hyperloops. So the takeaways? Well, Ripple just planted a flag in Swift's front yard. Acquisitions like Hidden Road, they hint at a bypass strategy. XRP remains a flexible but optional bridge, and regulators are the final boss. Whether you are team replace or team coexist, the race is officially on, and it's moving faster than most people realize.